The collision happened in slow motion, and then all at once. 1 second, Min-ho Kang was surveying the masquerade crowd with his usual detachment, another pointless night of champagne and empty conversation. The next, a woman in a golden mask came barreling backward through the velvet curtain, a tray of crystal flutes wobbling dangerously in her hands. She slammed into his chest with enough force to knock the air from his lungs. Glass shattered, champagne exploded across his custom Tom Ford suit in a cold, violent spray. Her body pressed against his as she stumbled, warm, solid, real, and he caught her by pure instinct. His hands found her waist, her palms landed flat against his chest, steadying herself. She looked up. Brown eyes, wide with shock, meeting his through that golden mask. And that's when it happened. 7 years of absolute nothing, 7 years of his body refusing to respond to anything, ended in one brutal, undeniable surge of heat that shot straight to his groin like lightning finding ground. His breath caught, his heart slammed against his ribs, every nerve ending that had been dead, dormant, destroyed, roared back to life with such violent intensity it almost hurt. She was already pulling away, stammering apologies in accented English, her voice melodic and flustered. But Min-ho couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the pounding need suddenly flooding his veins. Because for the first time in 7 years, since the night fire and screaming had stolen everything from him, he felt everything. And she had no idea what she'd just awakened. Darlings, if you think champagne on a designer suit is dramatic, wait until you hear what happens when a dead man comes back to life for the woman he can't have. Because that wasn't just champagne that spilled, that was 7 years of careful control going down the drain. Don't be the one who misses the moment everything changes. Subscribe now and don't leave Min-ho waiting in the dark. The Imperial Hotel's grand ballroom glittered like a jewel box turned inside out. 300 of Seoul's elites swirled beneath crystal chandeliers, their designer gowns and tailored suits hidden behind elaborate masks that cost more than most people earned in a month. Venetian half-masks studded with diamonds, feathered creations that swept upward like exotic birds, sleek leather designs that whispered of darker pleasures. Min-ho Kang stood at the edge of it all, a specter in black and silver. His mask was simple, elegant lines of brushed platinum that emphasized the sharp angles of his jaw, the cruel curve of his mouth. Beneath it, his eyes tracked the crowd with the cold efficiency of a predator counting prey. Ministers laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. CEOs made deals over glasses of wine that cost more than their secretaries' monthly salaries. Everyone wanted something. Everyone pretended they didn't. He felt nothing watching them. He'd felt nothing for 7 years. The numbness had become so familiar he'd stopped fighting it. Some mornings he woke and couldn't remember what desire felt like. That pull in your gut, that ache in your chest, that fire in your blood. It was all just words now, concepts his body had forgotten how to translate into sensation. His therapist called it dissociation, a trauma response, his brain protecting itself from the memories of that night, the warehouse, the fire, the screaming, watching someone he loved tortured while he hung from chains, helpless, the feeling of his fiancée's blood on his hands as she died, her last breath a whisper against his ear. "Live, Min-ho, please, live." But he hadn't lived. Not really. He'd survived. There was a difference. For 7 years, he'd gone through the motions, built his empire, consolidated power, became the man people feared to cross. Seoul's underground answered to him with a single word. Legitimate businesses paid him tribute disguised as consulting fees. Politicians returned his calls within minutes. He was untouchable. He was hollow. "That's Min-ho Kang," someone whispered nearby, the words carrying in that particular way people's voices did when they wanted to be overheard. "Don't even look at him wrong. Last person who crossed him disappeared without a trace." The woman beside the speaker clutched her champagne flute tighter, her knuckles white beneath her gloves. "I heard he's completely heartless, that nothing moves him, not money, not women, not even threats." They weren't wrong. Min-ho's right-hand man, Jay, materialized at his elbow like smoke. "Boss, the minister wants a word, something about the harbor contracts." "Tell him to wait." Min-ho's voice was flat, emotionless. Everything was flat these days. Even anger felt muted, like hearing music through walls. "He is insistent. Then let him be insistent." Min-ho took a sip of his whiskey. He didn't taste it. He never tasted anything anymore. Food was fuel. Alcohol was obligation. Pleasure was a ghost he'd stopped chasing years ago. He'd tried everything to wake himself up. Doctors who prescribed pills that dulled him further. Therapists who talked in circles about processing grief. Women, beautiful, willing women who he paid extremely well to try to coax a response from his uncooperative body. Nothing worked. Not medication, not meditation, not the most skilled hands or the softest lips or the most creative attempts to resurrect what the fire had killed. His body was a tomb, and he'd made his peace with that. The ballroom doors opened again, more guests arriving fashionably late, their laughter spilling into the gilded space like champagne from an overfilled glass. Min-ho watched with dead eyes, already calculating how soon he could leave without causing offense. Another hour, maybe. 2 if the minister proved difficult. His phone buzzed, a text from his head of security. "Perimeter secure, no threats detected." As if threats mattered anymore, as if anything mattered when you couldn't feel fear, couldn't feel desire, couldn't feel anything except the weight of your own breathing. The music swelled, a waltz, predictable and safe. Couples took to the floor, their movements synchronized and meaningless. Min-ho finished his whiskey, the burn in his throat more memory than sensation. This was his life now, beautiful and empty, powerful and pointless. He didn't know that in exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds, everything was about to change. He didn't know that chaos was about to crash through the service entrance in a golden mask and a catering uniform, carrying a tray of crystal flutes and the keys to his resurrection. He didn't know that his body, his traitorous, broken, 7-year dead body, was about to betray his carefully constructed numbness with one violent, undeniable need of need. All he knew was the weight of his empty glass and the familiar comfort of feeling nothing at all. Behind the velvet curtain that separated the ballroom from the service corridor, someone was about to make their entrance, and Min-ho Kang's 7 years of death were about to end in one spectacular collision. The service corridor behind the Imperial Hotel's grand ballroom was a different world entirely. Harsh fluorescent lights replaced crystal chandeliers, concrete floors instead of polished marble. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and the sharp tang of lemon from fresh-cut garnishes, nothing like the expensive perfumes that saturated the ballroom. Ife Mensa stood in front of a dingy mirror, adjusting her golden mask for the 3rd time. Her hands trembled slightly, and she hated herself for it. Operatives don't shake, soldiers don't feel fear, but her reflection told a different story. Brown eyes too wide, breath coming too fast, the pulse at her throat beating visibly beneath her dark skin. "This is it," she whispered to herself, her Ghanaian accent soft in the empty corridor. "Get close, make the contact memorable." The golden mask felt heavy on her face, ornate and beautiful in a way that made her feel like an imposter. She was catering staff tonight, invisible, beneath notice, exactly where she needed to be to get close to a man the world feared. Min-ho Kang, arms dealer, weapons trafficker, the monster who fed wars and profited from suffering. At least that's what her briefing file said. She'd studied his photograph for 3 months until his face haunted her dreams. Sharp jawline, cold eyes that held no warmth, no mercy, a mouth that never smiled. He was beautiful the way a blade was beautiful, all dangerous edges and lethal purpose. Women threw themselves at him. Men either worshipped him or feared him. And in 7 years, no one had gotten close enough to gather the evidence needed to bring him down. Until now, until her. The mission was simple in theory, impossible in
The plan was flawless. She timed his position, studied his patterns, knew exactly where he'd be standing at 9:47 p.m. when she burst through that curtain. The collision would look natural. Clumsy server, too much champagne, terrible accident. He'd never suspect it was orchestrated. He'd just remember her, and that's all she needed. Ife took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. Through the curtain, she could hear the music swelling, conversation rising and falling like waves, laughter that cost more than most people earned in a year, a world she'd never belonged to, playing a role she'd perfected. 3 months of preparation, weeks of rehearsal, hours studying his schedule, his security, his vulnerabilities. Everything came down to the next 60 seconds. She moved toward the curtain, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. This was just another operation, just another target. She'd done this before, gotten close to dangerous men, played whatever role the mission required, extracted what she needed, and disappeared like smoke. But something felt different tonight, something in the air, electric and waiting, like the moment before lightning struck, when the whole world held its breath. Ife shook off the feeling. Superstition was for people who had the luxury of belief. She dealt in facts, in evidence, in cold, hard reality. And the reality was simple. Min-ho Kang was a criminal who needed to be stopped. Nothing more, nothing less. She adjusted her grip on the tray, positioned herself at the curtain, and counted down from 10. 10. Chen's face in her mind. 9. The weight of the tray in her hands. 8. Her breathing slowing, steadying. 7. The mission parameters clear. 6. Make contact, be memorable. 5. Let him come looking. 4. Gather evidence. 3. Bring him down. 2. Justice for Chen. 1. Ife backed through the curtain with perfect timing, the tray wobbling just enough to look authentic. She could see him in her peripheral vision, tall, imposing, exactly where he was supposed to be. Black suit, silver mask, standing like a king surveying his kingdom. She let herself stumble, let the tray tilt, let physics and gravity do what they did best, and crashed straight into Min-ho Kang's chest with enough force to shatter glass and drench them both in expensive champagne. His hands caught her waist on instinct, warm, strong, solid in a way that made her breath catch. Her palms landed flat against his chest, and she could feel his heart pounding beneath the soaked fabric of his shirt, matching the frantic rhythm of her own. She looked up. Their eyes met through the masks, and the world stopped. Brown eyes meeting gray, her shock genuine this time, not performed, because something passed between them in that frozen second, something electric, something hungry, something that felt like recognition even though they'd never met. His pupils dilated, his breath caught, his grip on her waist tightened just slightly, fingers pressing into her curves through the thin fabric of her uniform. And she felt it, the sudden tension in his body, the way he went rigid, the sharp intake of breath that sounded almost like pain. This wasn't in the briefing. This wasn't part of the plan. Oh my God, she stammered, pulling away, her accent thicker with genuine shock. "I'm so sorry, sir. The door, I couldn't see." But he wasn't speaking, wasn't moving, just staring at her with those gray eyes like he'd seen a ghost, like she'd reached inside his chest and restarted a heart that had stopped beating years ago. People were turning, whispers spreading like wildfire through the crowd. His security was moving toward them. She needed to disappear, needed to vanish before they detained her, before anyone looked too closely at the clumsy server who just assaulted Seoul's most dangerous criminal. "I'll get towels," Ife said, backing away, playing the flustered role perfectly, even as her pulse hammered with something that felt dangerously close to fear or excitement. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. "I'm so sorry." She turned and fled into the crowd of servers, losing herself in the sea of black uniforms and white masks. Her legs felt weak, her hands shook harder now than before, and when she glanced back one last time, he was still standing there, drenched in champagne, surrounded by shocked guests, staring at the space where she'd been with an expression she couldn't read, but that made something deep in her stomach twist with heat. "Mission accomplished," she told herself. "Contact made. He'll remember you now." But as Ife disappeared through the service entrance and into the Seoul night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she just made a terrible, beautiful mistake. Because she'd remember him, too, the weight of his hands on her waist, the heat of his body pressed against hers, the way those gray eyes had looked at her like she was salvation and damnation wrapped in dark skin and a golden mask. She'd remember. And that wasn't part of the plan at all. The restaurant's private room felt smaller than it should have, intimate in a way that made Ife's breath catch. Minho sat across from her, firelight dancing in his dark eyes, and she couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. "Why event planning?" he asked, voice low and curious. She delivered her rehearsed answer about bringing people together, but when he smiled, really smiled, soft and genuine, something twisted in her chest. This wasn't supposed to feel real. "And you?" she asked. "Why does a CEO need such an elaborate event?" His expression shifted, shadows crossing his face. "Sometimes you need to remind people who you are." He paused, fingers tracing the rim of his wine glass. "Sometimes you need to remember yourself." The weight in those words pressed against her ribs. There was pain there, old and deep. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to run. If you're feeling this tension, darlings, imagine what happens next. Subscribe so you don't miss a single moment. Trust me, you'll regret it if you do. The walk to her apartment stretched and compressed time. Seoul glowed around them, autumn leaves whispering secrets. At her doorstep, she fumbled for her keys, hyper-aware of his presence behind her, solid, warm, dangerous. "Thank you for dinner," she managed, but her feet wouldn't move. He stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his heat. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "I should, but will you?" When he kissed her, 7 years of his starvation met her careful control and shattered it completely. His hands trembled against her face, her fingers twisted in his shirt. The kiss tasted like desperation and something frighteningly close to truth. She pulled away first, gasping. "I can't, not like this." Something raw and honest flickered across his face. "When you're ready, I'll wait." Inside, she leaned against the door, heart thundering, her lips still burned, her hands still shook. And miles away, Minho walked through Seoul's glittering streets, knowing he just kissed the woman who might destroy him and wanting her anyway. The event was flawless, every detail perfect, every guest satisfied, but Minho only saw her. The way she moved through the empty venue afterward, hips swaying in that fitted dress, made heat pool low in his belly. 7 years of nothing, and now he burned. "You're incredible," he said, voice rough with need. She turned, and the hunger in his eyes made her thighs clench. "At my job? everything. He crossed to her in 3 strides, hands cupping her face, thumbs tracing her full bottom lip. When he kissed her, it was devouring, tongue sliding against hers, tasting wine and want. His fingers tangled in her hair, pulling her closer until her breasts pressed against his chest. "Come home with me," he groaned against her mouth. Her body answered before her mind could. Yes. Darlings, what happens next is pure fire. Subscribe now. You'll want every scorching detail of this beautiful disaster. His penthouse glowed with city lights. On the balcony, champagne forgotten, he pressed her against the glass, mouth hot on her neck. She gasped as his hand slid up her thigh, fingers finding bare skin beneath her dress. Inside, he undressed her slowly, reverent hands exploring every curve, every dip. When her dress pulled at her feet, he dropped to his knees. 7 years, he whispered, kissing her stomach, her hip bones, the sensitive skin of her inner thighs. Her fingers threaded through his hair, trembling. And now I'm alive. On his bed, skin against skin, he moved inside her with desperate intensity. Each thrust pulled sounds from her throat she didn't recognize. His mouth found her breast, tongue circling, teeth grazing. She arched beneath him, nails raking down his scarred back. "Look at me," he commanded. Their eyes locked. In that moment, bodies joined, breath mingling. The lies between them felt like truth. Afterward, sweat slicked and shaking, he traced every inch of her, the curve of her waist, the swell of her hips. Stay. She did. And when they made love again in the pre-dawn darkness, it was slower, devastating. His lips worshipped places that made her weep. Her hands memorized the geography of his body. Neither spoke the truth screaming in their chests. This was more than mission, more than obsession. This was falling. Dawn broke soft and golden across Minho's penthouse, but Ife's heart hammered with guilt. He slept beside her, one arm draped possessively across her waist, his breathing deep and steady. Beautiful, trusting. She had work to do. Carefully, she slipped from beneath the warmth of his body, pulling on his oversized shirt. The fabric smelled like him, sandalwood and something darker, more primal. Her thighs ached deliciously from the night before, her lips still swollen from his kisses. "Focus," she commanded herself. In the living room, she planted the first device behind an abstract sculpture. Her hands trembled as she moved to his study, photographing documents spread across his desk, shipping manifests, coded communications, offshore accounts. Evidence. Mountains of it. "Got you," she whispered, but the words tasted like ash. Darlings, she's about to betray the man who worships her body like a temple. Subscribe now. This beautiful disaster is just beginning. The weeks that followed were exquisite torture. She stayed over constantly, each night a symphony of skin and sighs. He'd worship her body for hours, mouth hot between her thighs until she shattered, fingers finding every secret place that made her gasp his name. And when he finally slid inside her, stretching and filling her completely, she'd arch beneath him, nails scoring his back, wondering how something so wrong could feel so devastatingly right. "You're different with me," she whispered one night, tracing the scars mapping his chest. "You make me want to be." His voice broke on the words. "You make me want to be good." The evidence mounted with each visit, more devices planted, more files photographed, her handler's voice in her ear. "We almost have him." But then came the night everything changed. Minho returned bloodied from a rival gang's attack. She watched the security feed, his brutal efficiency, the bodies dropping, the cold calculation in his eyes. This was the real man, the monster she'd been hunting.
Yet, when he stumbled through the door, she ran to him, stripped his ruined shirt, cleaned his wounds with shaking hands. "You should leave," he said, voice hollow. "This is my world. It's not safe." "I'm staying." "Why?" "Because I'm falling in love with you," she thought. "Because every lie tastes like poison now. Because I want to." They made love angry and desperate, his teeth at her throat, her legs locked around his hips, both of them gasping truths they couldn't speak aloud. And afterward, tangled in sweat-damp sheets, she knew with terrible certainty she was compromised. Minho stared at the listening device in his palm, his world crumbling. Then another, a dozen bugs scattered across his desk, each one a betrayal, each one planted by hands that had touched him with what he'd believed was love. The security sweep had found them all, and the timeline matched perfectly with Ife's visits. "Boss," Jay said carefully, "it has to be her." Minho's chest felt like it was caving in. 7 years of numbness had been better than this agony of hope torn apart. "Find out who she's working for, but don't touch her. Not yet." Because even now, even knowing, his body ached for her. Darlings, when the truth comes out, it's going to destroy them both. Subscribe. You need to see how this beautiful wreckage unfolds. The counter-surveillance revealed everything. Encrypted communications, outside contacts. She was an operative, professional, precise. Every touch calculated, every moan a performance. Except he'd felt her shake in his arms, heard her gasp his name like a prayer. Was any of it real? Meanwhile, Ife's handler pushed harder. "We have enough. Time to move." "Just give me 1 more week," she pleaded, hating the desperation in her voice. "Are you compromised, Agent Mensah?" "No," the lie burned. "I'm close to something bigger." "Your reports are becoming sympathetic." "He's still the target," she insisted, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. That weekend, Minho invited her to his private villa. Isolated, beautiful, romantic. A trap. But she went willingly, knowing it was her chance for final evidence. The first night, he made love to her with devastating tenderness, mouth trailing kisses down her spine, hands worshipping every curve, whispering how much he loved her against her skin. She came apart beneath him, tears sliding down her cheeks, wondering if this was goodbye. The next morning, he asked her to marry him. "What?" Her heart stopped. "I love you. I want you in my life permanently." His eyes burned with intensity. "I've wasted 7 years being dead. I won't waste another moment." She should have said no, should have run. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Yes." They celebrated with champagne and promises and lovemaking that felt like salvation. His fingers laced with hers, bodies moving in perfect synchronization, both of them weeping with the weight of it. But that night, while he slept, she crept into his office. The encrypted laptop held everything she needed. She photographed it all. "Looking for something?" His voice, cold as winter, froze her blood. The safe house smelled like stale coffee and desperation. 3 days of hunting their hunters, 3 days of living in each other's shadows, mapping connections that led back to the man who'd killed everyone they'd ever loved. Ife's hands trembled as she stared at the photograph, her handler shaking Bake's blood-stained hand. $2 million. That's what her mentor's life had cost. That's what she'd been worth as a pawn. "He sent me after you to cover his tracks," she whispered. "Every mission, every operation, I was his distraction." Chen got too close to the truth, so did we. The walls felt too tight, the air too thin. She stood abruptly, needing space, needing anything but the suffocating weight of betrayal. "Where are you going?" "I don't know. Away. I need..."
His hand caught her wrist, not roughly, never roughly with her. Don't. What don't? Her voice cracked. Don't fall apart? Don't admit that I wanted to hate you because it would be easier than this? Don't run. He pulled her closer, his other hand sliding up her neck, thumb tracing her jawline. Min-ho! His mouth crashed against her protest, swallowing her, not gentle, not careful. 7 years of death, meeting 3 months of lies, and underneath it all, the terrifying truth that this feeling was the only real thing in their world of deception. She kissed him back with equal desperation, fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer, harder, needing to feel something beyond the betrayal eating her alive. They stumbled backwards. His hands found the hem of her shirt, yanking it over her head. Her fingers worked his buttons with shaking urgency. "I don't know if this is real," she gasped against his mouth. "It's real." His lips traced her collarbone, teeth grazing the sensitive skin of her throat. Clothes fell like abandoned lies, skin against skin, his mouth on her breast, tongue circling, making her arch into him with a "I know." His voice broke. "I know, and I'm sorry, and I love you too." They moved together in desperate rhythm, the slap of flesh, the gasps and moans, the way her body tightened around him as pleasure built like a wave she couldn't stop. "Don't let go," she begged as she shattered. "Never." He followed her over the edge, his groan muffled against her neck, never letting go. Afterward, legs tangled on the narrow bed, his fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare hip. 48 hours, he murmured. "We have 48 hours to stop the shipment. Then what happens to us?" His hand spread over her still flat stomach, possessive and tender. "Then we find out if 2 people built on lies can make something true." She covered his hand with hers. "Promise me you'll fight tomorrow. Promise me you'll survive." "I promise." She turned to face him, pressing her lips to his scarred chest. "We both promise." Outside, Seoul held its breath. Inside, 2 broken people held each other, pretending that love alone could shield them from the fire to come. The warehouse reeked of oil and gunpowder. Ife moved through the shadows, her wire transmitting every word to Minho's team positioned outside. Hundreds of weapons crates lined the walls, enough to fuel wars, to destroy countries, to end countless lives. Bach appeared like death itself, his eyes scanning the room with paranoid precision. "Who are you again?" Her cover held, smooth, professional, but his gaze lingered too long on her face, and she felt the trap closing before she heard it snap shut. His phone rang. Handler Park's voice crackled through. "The woman is Interpol, Chen's protégé." Bach smiled. "I know." Doors slammed, lights blazed, armed men materialized from every corner. She fought like hell itself had trained her, brutal, efficient, desperate. But 12 men with guns beat skill every time. They took her down hard, zip-tied her wrists, dragged her bleeding into an office that smelled like cigars and death. Bach circled her like a predator. "Where is Kang?" She said nothing. The first blow split her lip. The second cracked a rib. Pain exploded white hot through her body, but she swallowed the scream. Her mentor had died for this. Min-ho was counting on her. She would not break. Outside, Min-ho heard the wire go dead and felt his world end. His handler's voice. "Abort. She's compromised." "No. That's an order." "I've been dead for 7 years, Min-ho said, loading his weapon. "She gave me life. I'm not choosing death again." The warehouse doors exploded inward, flashbangs, smoke, the thunder of gunfire. Min-ho moved through the chaos like a man possessed, every bullet finding flesh, every obstacle demolished. Nothing would stop him. Nothing would keep him from her. He found her fighting 3 guards with a broken chair leg, blood streaming down her face, eyes wild and fierce and so fucking beautiful it hurt. Their eyes met.
everything said in that single look. I love you, I'm sorry, I'm here, never leaving. He tossed her a gun. She caught it mid-spin. They fought back to back, moving as one body, one heartbeat, two people who'd finally found their rhythm in the violence that had shaped them both. She covered his reload. He saved her from a blindside shot. Perfect synchronization, born from trust, finally earned. Bach emerged from the smoke, weapon drawn. You think you've won? Sirens wailed outside. Interpol raid in full force. Bach's gun swung toward Ife. Minho dove without thinking. The bullet meant for her tore through his shoulder. He hit the ground hard, vision blurring with pain. Ife's scream tore from somewhere primal. Her shot hit Bach's center mass. He fell, gasping, dying in the flames his own men had set to destroy evidence. The building groaned, ceiling beams crashed down, fire everywhere, consuming everything. Ife dragged Minho toward the exit, his blood soaking through her hands, his weight heavy against her smaller frame. Stay with me, she begged. Don't you dare leave me now. They collapsed outside as the warehouse exploded behind them, flames reaching for the sky like judgment itself. Interpol swarmed, medics rushed forward. Handler Park was already in custody across the city. It was over. Minho's hand found hers in the chaos, fingers interlacing. We made it. We made it, she whispered, pressing her lips to his bloodied knuckles. We're alive. Together. Finally, impossibly, alive. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and second chances. Adjacent beds, their hands clasped in the space between, his shoulder bandaged, her ribs wrapped, both of them breathing. We did it, Minho whispered, thumb tracing circles on her palm. We survived, Ife's voice broke. Now what? Now we learn to actually live. Handler Park confessed everything. Chen's murder, the conspiracy, 2 years of lies that had cost so many lives. Justice, finally, for the mentor she'd loved like a father. This is where it all comes together. If you've made it this far, hit that subscribe button. There's more beautiful chaos coming. Now let's bring them home. 3 months later, they walked out of Interpol headquarters for the last time. Resignations signed, identities their own again. Seoul's autumn air tasted like freedom, crisp, clean, honest. What do you want to do? He asked. Something real, something true, breathed Ife. They opened a security consulting firm. Small office, honest work, skills used for protection instead of destruction. She handled clients with her brilliant smile. He managed logistics with his strategic mind. Partnership in every sense of the word. Their apartment became a sanctuary, mornings tangled in sheets, his mouth tracing lazy paths down her spine, her laughter filling rooms that had known only silence, cooking together, dancing to no music, learning the intimate rhythms of domestic love, how he liked his coffee, how she hoarded blankets, the way their bodies fit perfectly on the couch during movie nights. His mother visited from Busan, tears streaming when she saw her son smile, really smile, for the first time in 7 years. She brought you back to life, she told Ife, holding her hands like precious things. Ghana came next. Ife's grandmother studied Minho with ancient eyes. You carry death, but my granddaughter carries life. Together you balance. Their wedding blended cultures, Korean hanbok and kente cloth, 2 families becoming one, vows spoken without lies or masks. You crashed into my life and woke me up, he promised. I choose you, every day, forever. 6 months later, morning light painted their bedroom gold. Ife awoke to nausea and sudden, terrifying hope. The pregnancy test trembled in her hands. Positive. She brought it to him, tears already falling. Minho! He stared at the little window, at the 2 lines that meant everything. His hands shook as he touched her still flat stomach, his face crumpling with wonder. We're having a baby? We're making something beautiful, she whispered. From all that darkness, life from death. He kissed her then, soft, reverent, tasting salt from both their tears. I thought I'd never feel anything again. Now I feel everything. Joy, fear, love, everything. They held each other as sunrise spilled through the windows, two people who'd been shattered and remade, stronger in the broken places, their kitchen, their home, their future growing between them. That collision at the masquerade wasn't an accident, darlings. It was fate smashing two broken people hard enough to make them whole. Drop a comment. What would you risk for a love that brings you back to life?